Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ward 3 City Hall Community Meeting. My name is Victoria McGregor, and I am the meeting coordinator. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to be here with us. For those attending a City Hall meeting for the first time, these are meant to be gateway meetings. They're an opportunity to meet and speak with your neighbors, the mayor, and city staff, who tonight will be touching upon a wide range of topics as they provide high-level updates related to their ongoing work. After each presentation, we'll take an initial question or two. Following all presentations, we'll open up to a general Q&A segment. And if you haven't grabbed a copy of tonight's slides already, they're at this table on the right here. You're welcome to take those home with you. But before we begin, I would like to invite Council President and Ward 3 Councilor Ben Ewan-Campen up to say a quick hello.
Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to see everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces, and for folks that I haven't met, I'm Ben Ewan-Campen. I'm the Ward 3 City Councilor. I see my colleague Jake Wilson, who's a City Councilor at large. And am I missing anyone else? So I'm going to just be very brief. This is a meeting for everyone to hear directly from city staff, to get questions answered, and then also to kind of hang out after and talk directly with city staff. And I really like these because the general public gets to hear directly from the civil servants, the public servants who work for the city, and obviously from elected officials like myself. But this is really not a meeting about the city council, obviously. This is to hear directly from the mayor, from the departments, but I am going to be here all night. So if folks do have questions, please talk to me tonight. Shoot me an email, give me a call anytime. I'm always happy to meet. And I'll be here until the very end. So if you do have questions, let me know. And with that, should I introduce the mayor or you? Okay. Have fun, everybody.
Thank you, Councilor. A reminder that if we don't get to your question tonight, or if you prefer email to give feedback or questions, we do have an email address specifically for these meetings. It's cm@somervillema.gov. Please feel free to reach out to us there. Tonight's meeting is also being recorded and will be available after the conclusion of our fall meeting series. So that's after November 2nd. You'll find all recordings on the City TV government YouTube channel. Before we dive into main presentations, I do have a series of quick city updates for you. This table on the left includes several key dates for the upcoming 2023 election season, including deadlines to apply to register to vote by mail, early voting dates, and the city election date, which is Tuesday, November 7th. Blue ballot boxes have been placed around the city and are checked regularly. We welcome you to utilize these for all election items. For the 2023-24 school year, Somerville Recreation is offering a variety of programs and activity options at various locations throughout the year. Teens can access these programs through the General Teen Center membership, as well as the Powder House Teen Center membership. Both are free. And a reminder that the teen room at the Somerville Public Library Central Branch also is open with regular programming. These next two slides feature current career training opportunities from the Somerville Center for Adult Learning Experiences, also known as SCALE, which is part of the school district. Topics include patient experience in healthcare, information technology, basic accounting, and college readiness. These are all free career training opportunities through a city grant for some Somerville residents. And you can just follow the QR codes if any of those interest you. The Somerville Council on Aging has launched a senior community survey to identify resident needs to guide improvements to existing programs and services. You can take the survey online, over the phone, or download and submit a paper copy in person. The survey is open until Friday, November 3rd. As winter approaches, our Public Works Department has provided a breakdown of snow responsibilities. A reminder that property owners are responsible for snow removal on sidewalks and curb ramps adjacent to their property. Somerville's Historic Preservation Commission hosts weekly docent tours through October at Milk Row Cemetery, Prospect Hill Tower, and Old Powder House. Dates and times can be found on the city calendar. If you're also interested in volunteering, please email Brandon at bwilson@somervillema.gov. Somerville's Health and Human Services is hosting several flu vaccine clinics in October and November. Register to get your flu shot at somervillema.gov/vaccines. A quick update on housing. The last 2 years have been active in terms of affordable housing production. This slide provides a basic breakdown of information of units created in the last 2 years. If you would like to get on the Housing Division's listserv for new opportunities, you can sign up by going to the city website and search for inclusionary housing. These next 2 slides summarize the efforts of the city and the Somerville Arts Council, who are leading a cultural capacity planning effort with the goal to help arts and culture thrive in Somerville. Over 30 conversations were held in 2023, which were led by cultural ambassadors within the community. The cultural capacity plan is about examining what the community claims are issues, assets, and opportunities, and how to then distill them into a plan of action. For next steps, a cultural vision forum will be held on November 13th. To keep up with the plan, you can also visit the project page on their Summer Voice website. Next, I did want to highlight 2 upcoming events, which are both this week. First is a ribbon cutting and dedication ceremony for Philip Rivas Senior Field on Thursday, October 26th. This 45,000 square foot space is the high school's first ever on-site field space and consists of artificial turf with a natural wood infill. It's located behind the high school, adjacent to the new Gilman Square MBTA stop. Also on Thursday, we have the 2nd annual Trick or Treat. You can join city staff on the City Hall concourse for safe trick-or-treating and other activities. Costumes are encouraged. And finally, a reminder that you can keep up to date with all things City of Somerville by subscribing to our weekly newsletter. You can do this by following the QR code here or by visiting somervillema.gov/subscribe. On this webpage, you'll find a list of other departments that have their own newsletters. We welcome you to subscribe to any and all that interest you. And for those of you on the web, we also have our social media channels listed here. That concludes our quick update segment for tonight. I would now like to invite Mayor Ballantyne to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. It's so nice to see you. Thank you for being here. I thought we would just spend a little bit of time in the beginning here to get to know one another. So I'm going to ask you to raise your hand after some questions I have for you. If this is your first City Hall community meeting, please raise your hand. Wow, wonderful. Thank you for coming. If you've lived in Somerville less than a year, raise your hand. Okay, less than 2. Less than 5? Great. Less than 10? Less than 20? How about less than 25? Less than 30? Over 30 years. Wonderful. Now, if you've lived here your entire life, raise your hand. Okay, great. If you're a parent, raise your hand. If you're a parent of a child or children in the Somerville Public Schools. If you had children who used to go, because some of the meetings wanted to know that their children had graduated from Somerville High School or Somerville schools. If your children have since graduated, okay, wonderful. If you're a pet owner, raise your hand. Okay. If you've walked the new community path extension. If you've ridden your bike on it. Okay. Do you have a question that you want to ask people in the audience? No? Okay, go ahead. What would you like to know from the audience?
I would like to know the safety of the community because there are many different group of people in Somerville.
Okay, wonderful. You know, a little bit later, our police chief is going to come up and talk about public safety. So is it okay if we leave that answer and he'll share information back? Thank you. So what I'd like to do, thank you for sharing. I'd like to share or introduce you to city staff who are here this evening. I'm going to ask them, wait a second. So I'm going to ask them to stand and introduce themselves and their departments because not everybody who's here tonight from the city is going to be presenting. So if you want to talk to a particular department head for whatever your issue is, I want you at least to know that they're in the room. So staff, could you all stand up? And maybe those who are hanging back can move forward a little bit. And why don't we go this way and we'll go around the room.
Good evening, Ward 3. My name is Ed Hardy. I'm the Customer Experience Manager at the Office of Constituent Services.
Hi, I'm Eileen Costa, Ward 3 also, obviously, lifelong resident, 311 call taker.
How's it going, everyone? Nick Alekel, Department of Communications.
Hi again, Victoria McGregor, also in communications.
Gregory Jenkins with the Arts Council and a Ward 3 resident.
Hello everybody, Nick Salerno, Elections Commissioner.
Jesse Moon, Construction Liaison, Construction Asset Management.
Charlie Green, Fire Chief.
Good evening everyone, Dan Hamlin, Senior Project Manager, Engineering Department.
Hi, I'm Sean Tierney and I'm the Assistant Fire Chief.
I'm Blair Wong and I'm the Project Specialist for the Digital Bridge Initiative.
Hi, Ashley Spiliotis from the Council on Aging.
Charlie Femino, Police Chief. Jim Donovan, Captain, Police Department.
Hi.
Emily Hutchings, Senior Planner with Planning, Preservation, and Zoning.
Regina Carey, Workforce Development.
Elise Ballarge, Sustainability Planner in the Office of Sustainability and Environment.
Wendy Cheklich, Preservation Planner and Planner for Planning, Preservation, and Zoning.
Ben Demers, I'm the Planner for Economic Development.
I'm Louise Oliveira, Director of Public Space and Urban Forestry.
Tom Galagani, Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development.
Hi everybody, Brad Rawson. I serve as Director of Mobility in the Mayor's Office.
Hi everyone, Colin Ziegler, Environmental Health Manager, RATS.
Meredith Gamble, Office of Immigrant Affairs.
I'm Jade, I'm Samsiva, Office Immigrant Affairs.
Okay, wonderful. So now you all know, we all know each other now. Thank you. So this evening, you know, we want to talk about climate change and the impacts that it's having on our city and the people who live here and our small businesses. It's a local issue with local impacts, and it also has local solutions. I know we all lead full lives. I acknowledge that climate change might not be what every family is talking about at the dinner table. That's why I'm so glad you're here tonight with me. We're going to talk about how the city is working to address the impacts of climate change that affect the daily lives of Somerville residents, businesses, and property owners. And also, excuse me one second, Councilor at Large Kristen Strezzo walked in and I didn't see her. She's right there. Thank you. To start, I have also two questions for you. Would you please raise your hand if you're familiar with climate change? Okay. And now, would you raise your hand if you're concerned how climate change is impacting or will impact our community? Great. Thank you. I'll share that I would have raised my hand for both of these questions. As a mother of two daughters, I'm very worried about what kind of planet we will be leaving behind for our children. And as mayor, and as before that as a counselor, I have long felt a deep sense of duty to strive to address both climate impacts we're seeing right now, as well as those projected to come in the future. Climate change is complex and broad, and I'm heartened to see that so many of our residents are also looking for solutions. So after a little bit of grounding, it's the determination to act that I'm going to focus on tonight. Just quickly, climate change refers to the shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. Shifts can be natural, or since the 1800s, human activity has been the main drivers. And this has been primarily because of burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas. And these fossil fuels generate greenhouse gases, and those greenhouse gases wrap the earth in this blanket, trapping the sun's heat and raising temperature. So what's the result? We get warmer temperatures, which contribute to extreme weather. And the important thing to know is that we can still limit the impact of climate change if we act now. We are already seeing the climate impacts around us in the world and at home. Flooding, these pictures, the one on the left is from out in western Massachusetts of flooded crops, and the one on the right is here in Somerville. We've seen not only the flooding, but we've seen wildfire smokes and intensifying storms and extreme heat that have been filling the headline news. So how could this possibly impact us? Well, our hazard mitigation study projects that if Somerville were to have a direct hit from a Category 2 hurricane, we could see more than $125 million worth of damage and lost productivity, and we could displace 500 households. And then far from the headlines, so what are the impacts here to the city of Somerville? We're also seeing that in the work that we do. The increased frequency of storms means that our water and sewer department have had to significantly ramp up hours dedicated to preventing and addressing flooding. Before every forecasted storm, they have to make sure that the more than 3,600 catch basins across the city are cleared to make sure the water drainage is working. They also had to increase overtime to handle flood calls during and after storms. In our inspectional services department, they are now responding to more basement floods, including basement level apartments, more mold issues leading to air quality issues, more freezing pipes that can do $1,000 worth of damage, increased rodent activity, which is exacerbated by the warmer climates, and monitoring for additional stresses on building materials for temperature swings. In our Department of Public Works, after decades, we've had to change the dress code to address the extreme heat and cold for our outdoor crew. They now wear shorts when it's safe to do so, are supplied with quality clothing for winters, wicking shirts and cooling towels in the summer, and when needed, we alter the timing of work assignments. They are now monitoring for the extreme weather-induced failures like cracked windows, flooding, and storm-damaged trees. Likewise, our communication department and outreach staff have had to increase messaging on preparedness and warning for a range of issues triggered by extreme heat, cold, storms, and more. As an administration, we've been monitoring these impacts and dedicating funding and staffing where it's needed to meet these new demands. We've created new positions in rodent control, inspectional services, DPW, and emergency communications as a direct result. And again, this is just a sampling. There are impacts across operations citywide. And we're not sitting down and just waiting for this to happen. We are working to be proactive. So let me zoom into what we're doing at the bigger picture level. In addition to these operational changes we've had, we have to plan, and our plan is called Climate Forward Plan, and that's our roadmap for climate action efforts. And there are 3 key areas: reduce Somerville's contribution to climate change, prepare Somerville, and center equity within all efforts. What that means is that we are always striving to fairly distribute opportunities created by climate action, such as new green jobs or energy-saving programs or educational outreach. So as we're guided by these 3 principles, we are focused in 5 target areas: buildings, transportation and mobility, environment, community, and leadership. So what does that look like? We've been measuring our carbon emissions, for one thing. So 2/3 of Somerville's greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings, 1/3 comes from transportation, and about 4% comes from waste. To reach our goal to be carbon negative by 2050, we are striving to eliminate nearly all our emissions. That's a tall order, but we have a path. To start, we're working to reduce our emissions in a number of ways. In our city buildings, we're steadily reducing energy use and shifting to renewable energies. For example, just about 2 weeks ago now, I signed a contract to get 30% of our municipal electricity from a local Massachusetts solar farm. That's 30%. For our private homes and properties, we've been aiding in the shift to renewables in a number of ways. Our teams in City Hall offer programs to assist both renters and homeowners with accessing energy-saving programs. We have the Somerville's Community Choice Electric Program that offers competitively priced renewable energy options, and you can sign up anytime. Currently, we have more than 760 net zero passive house units in construction in Somerville, with more than 161 of those units slated for affordable. We've built requirements and incentives into our zoning for energy efficient construction. We have 50 certified LEED Gold and Platinum buildings in development. This year, we were one of 4 communities in Massachusetts to adopt and enact the Specialized Energy Code. And Somerville was the first in New England to establish a green score. What is this? It's an incentive that we have in our zoning that includes elements that reduce urban heat island, manages stormwater, and filter pollutants. The city is also working hard to make it easy for our community to choose low carbon ways to travel. The idea isn't to tell people what to do, but rather to make green choice an easy option. So our efforts are focused on prioritizing bus lanes, the extension of the Green Line, expanding our bicycle network, pedestrian safety improvements, and pursuing Vision Zero, which is an effort to prevent all serious injuries and deaths on our roadways. And we're also studying how best to expand our electric vehicle charging station network. As we work to prepare ourselves for climate impacts, addressing our environment and our infrastructure are also at play. So we are tackling multiple water and sewer projects to reduce flooding, planting trees, removing sick trees. We're expanding green space to help our neighborhoods stay cooler and provide permeable surfaces to absorb rainwater and reducing flooding. As we see climate impacts on our smallest creatures and plants, we are also working to preserve and develop local habitat and plant native species to support biodiversity. That includes creating pollinator gardens for insects, including butterflies and bees, like the one you see in this picture at Conway Park. We've established a pollinator action plan and advisory committee to guide these efforts. We've increased the number of native trees that fill our urban canopy. And we're also integrating green infrastructure into our streetscapes and parks. Wastes also contribute to greenhouse gases by producing methane as it decays in our landfills. Last year, the city completed the community's first zero waste plan and set a goal to reduce waste by 90% by 2050. And finally, the Mystic River presents coastal flooding risks for us, and I'll share more on that in a moment. For citywide flooding risk, we have numerous aggressive efforts underway to reduce the impacts. And they're focused in 3 areas: targeted projects such as Cedar Street, the Community Path, Washington Street Bridge, the new drainage project at the new Mystic Outfall, Morrison Ave tank to reduce flooding in Davis Square and on Morrison Ave. We're also undertaking major multi-million-dollar sewer system upgrades. This includes Somerville Ave drainage improvement project, the Poplar Street pumps project. Would you raise your hand if you know where the Poplar Street pump project is? It is over, do you know where Herb Chambers is? Yeah, okay, in the Brick Bottom area. So just adjacent to it is the Poplar Street. It used to be an incinerator. We used to burn our trash, at least when I moved to Somerville. So yeah, it's, why do I mention this is, it will serve 2/3 of the city in its wastewater. 2/3 flow out that way past Target over towards the Brick Bottom and next to Herb Chambers in that area. Also then we have a citywide sewer separation which improves water quality and reduces flooding. This map shows Somerville's areas most like to flood in a 100-year storm. They include Assembly Square, Union Square, Davis Square. And we're not just sitting back and waiting to be surprised. We're currently hiring for our first sustainability and resiliency planner to expand our work to tackle these challenges. So coastal flooding. We are one of the founding members of the Resilient Mystic Collaborative that's organized by the Mystic River Watershed Association. With the help of federal and state delegation, this collaboration, we've been able to raise millions of dollars for 3 critical projects that will protect more than 100,000 residents and more than $60 billion in property. The 3 projects include the Amelia Earhart Dam, which you can see in the picture. Raise your hand if you know where the Amelia Earhart Dam is. Okay, it's over by Assembly, the Mystic River. There's also a yacht club there, Winter Hill Yacht Club. As I say to my friends who don't live here, we have, water frontage in Somerville. And everybody says, no, you don't. You do. We even have a yacht club. And right next to it, the green space to the right is Draw 7 Park. That is one of the 3 projects in renovating it. It's going to help us with our stormwater management by preventing storm surges from flanking the dam. And there's a bonus because through the expansion, we'll have a multi-use path there, over there at the renovation. And finally, the 3rd project to create coastal protection is the Island End River. Just east of us to the border between Everett and Chelsea. So if you can think of over near Sullivan Square, there's actually a river that goes up there, Everett and Chelsea on one side. This area produces and processes, there's the New England Produce Center. And it generates $7 billion annually in economic activity. It certainly provides tremendous jobs. and it already floods during coastal storms and king tides. There are more than 15,000 low-income residents who live in that area. This project will help protect these homes and this vital food center from coastal storms and sea level rise. Our climate forward efforts also focus on community. They range from offering programs to outreach that support healthy and resilient communities, warming and cooling centers. We have resiliency programs like Keep Cool and Flood Ready that are educational outreach. And the creation this year of our new Emergency Shelter Displacement Fund to assist residents with nowhere else to go in need of emergency housing due to issues such as fire, flooding, burst water pipes. And finally, we're working to grow our culture of climate action with our climate ambassador programs, the Mayor's Youth Summer Jobs Program, and engaging residents like you in shaping our Somerville Climate Forward Plan. Really, everything that we're doing around climate change, though, is focused on the health and resiliency of our community, which brings me back to leadership goal of our Climate Forward Plan. We are focused in three main areas: city government leading by example. When we shift vehicles to electric or put solar arrays on top of our schools and cut our energy use, that's the city walking the walk. The second is regional collaboration, like our joint efforts to address coastal flooding. And of course, leadership includes advocating for carbon neutrality and climate action at the state level. Somerville has received the highest rating for our climate leadership and transparent reporting from an organization called CDP. It's a global nonprofit that sets standards for environmental reporting. Whenever and wherever we can weigh in, we do. And we are fortunate that our federal and state delegation do the same. We need your help. Oops, next slide. We need your help. So this is the survey. Please fill it out. Please share it with anyone you know, so we can hear what you have to say or your inputs and ideas. And I thank you very much. I'm happy to take a few questions right now. I'm here all evening. I'll be here for the Q&A at the end. If you just want to move on to the next presenter, that's fine too. But I'm happy to take 2 questions now.
We can take 2 initial questions. Can I go there and I'll come back?
Thank you, Mary Valentine, for this wonderful evening, kicking us off. You talked a lot about solar arrays on city buildings. I know Fenway Park has been doing urban farming on their roof. Has there been discussion about doing that on any of the Somerville city buildings or in other locations in Somerville?
So thank you for the question. I did a while ago. You have to find someone who wants to do it, and to make sure, you have to make sure that your roofs obviously are sustained. We have old infrastructure, old buildings here in Somerville. Yeah, there's going to be a solar array that goes up there, but I don't know, is there, can you answer? Yeah, more details on that. So I'll bring, Louisa is our Director of Public Space.
Thanks for the question. So that garden is actually taken care of by a Somerville business, Green City Growers, and it's kind of a showpiece for Fenway Park. We have passed the first urban agriculture ordinance in Massachusetts. That was in 2012. We have a number of different food growing places. I don't know if you've ever been to the South Street Farm that Groundwork Somerville manages. But as the mayor said, having a farm that is operational on top of buildings is a little bit more complicated. We have a green roof. We encourage developers to build green roofs, and there's been conversation about that becoming a requirement. But the buildings have to be built with that in mind.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This is a fantastic evening, and I'm so glad to be here with you and everybody. We have an older house that does not have a roof that permits solar panels. It's a slate roof, and we have a gas stove. Could you address any programs that would help us install solar and convert our gas appliances to electric? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'll let Elise give you all the program information.
Hi, so there are a lot of programs through Mass Save that can help you transition some of your gas appliances to electric, and I'd be happy to talk with you after, and we can exchange information to go over that. And this goes for anyone else here as well. If you have gas appliances that you'd like to electrify, we can help find the right programs for you. Rewiring America is an organization and a website that has a tool that can help connect you with resources, whether they're state or federal, and you can put in like the type of house you have, what kind of heating system you have, things like that, and it can help connect you to resources like that as well. For the slate roof, I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to do a little more research on that though. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll pass it on to, who's next? Okay. Thank you. I'll be here all evening.
Good evening, everyone. It might be too loud. My name is Dan Amelin. I'm a senior project engineer, senior project manager with the engineering department. With me tonight is Jesse Moose.
We're a package deal.
We've been working together now for about 5 years, started with Somerville Avenue, currently working on Spring Hill, which I'm sure many of you are intimately familiar with at this point in time. As we get started, we're going to start with just some brief department updates. We'll provide a brief update on the project itself, the current state of Highland Avenue, and just the last slide to just kind of inform you all how to get in touch with us. So like I said, I'm Dan Amelin. I've been managing this Spring Hill project here. Oh, sorry, jumping ahead. Before I get there, I know that's what you're all eager to hear. Before we get to that point, a quick update on combined sewer overflow planning. As the mayor graciously mentioned, we've taken a very climate forward approach with a lot of work we do in the engineering department, and we have a combined sewer overflow meeting coming up November 15th. We encourage you all to join to learn more about how the system works. Next up, we have an Adopt a Drain program, which is a new initiative, and I'm going to give the microphone to Jesse here to explain a little bit about that.
How many people here have signed up for our Adopt a Drain program yet? We got one? Okay, here's the second question. How many people have a phone that can aim at that QR code right now? So what we're asking you to do is, as the mayor was speaking about, is that our catch basins are getting full with leaves. It's becoming fall now. We're going to be inundated with it. We're asking for your help. And what we're asking for you to do is take ownership of a catch basin on your street. And as you do that, you actually get the opportunity to name it. You can name it something funny if you want. Catch me if you catch basin, something like that. It's a free program. It's nice to have ownership of your street as well. So we're going to talk now about Spring Hill. I'm going to pass back to Dan. Slide.
All right, so this is my moment here, and I apologize to everyone in advance who has a little bit of frustration with the project. You're not alone. So just to give everyone a brief update, this project started in earnest in February 2022. We are currently nearing the end of 2023. So we originally anticipated this project to be complete at the end of next summer 2024. Unfortunately, the project is running a little bit late into 2025 due to Eversource Gas working on Lower Summer Street in front of Nunziato Park. That effort took over a year longer than we all initially thought. And as a result, the utility work we still have to do on that section of Lower Summer Street can now not be done until next year, followed by surface restoration. As many of you know, kind of the current work going on is finishing up the School Street utilities. I'm sure you all see School Street closed on pretty much a daily basis at this point. The good news here is that we're aiming to finish up our utility work and get the street paved It's going to be the first lift of asphalt. There's still more work to be done, but the street should be paved before Thanksgiving of this year and reopen for the winter.
It's a huge milestone for us. So, if you live on School Street, if you drive down School Street from Highland, it will be open for you to get the market basket. I know Eileen has.
Even our own city colleagues are a little frustrated with us. So, like I said, you're not alone. The other big piece of work here I want to mention to you all, as I'm sure many of you now are aware, for better or for worse, Summer Street. We're in the active phase of surface restoration. What this means is we're installing new irrigation for future plantings, bioretention basins, stormwater tree trenches, and I forget the total number of trees on Summer Street, but there's a lot of new trees going in. We're really trying to completely overhaul the tree canopy within the Spring Hill neighborhood itself. That said, because there is a school nearby, and part of the city's overall initiative is increasing pedestrian safety, as Mayor Ballantyne alluded to earlier, a lot of the side streets that intersect with Summer Street, as many of you have noticed, are now narrower. The reason is we want to reduce the length of each crosswalk so that pedestrians aren't in the road longer than they, I guess, used to be. So by narrowing these intersections, it certainly makes it more challenging to drive, but it increases pedestrian safety, especially for those most vulnerable. Coming up next year, well, I'll start with this winter because it kind of blends this year and next year. We may be doing some utility work on Lower Summer Street. It's going to be restricted to drainage work. It's likely not going to last all winter either. When we get around to spring, almost all the utility work for the whole project will be complete. However, we still have a lot of surface work to do. Avon Street, Berkeley Street, Oxford Street, Gibbon Street, Cambria Street, Westwood, Summer Street, Highland, which we'll get to in a second. And am I missing one?
Berkeley, Oxford?
I think I got those. And School Street, obviously. In Benton Road. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So I know I'm sure a lot of you have questions. Jesse and I are going to be hosting a public meeting, much like this one, specifically for this project on Monday, November 13th at 6:00 p.m. That meeting is going to be virtual. So we won't have it in person, but for those of you who are able to, you can log in, you can register on the project's website, and we encourage you all to attend where we'll have a lot more time to have dialogue and answer questions. Moving on to Highland Ave. I know this has been a sore spot for pretty much everyone here. Highland Ave has seen a lot of construction between the space we're in right now and part of this Spring Hill project. The project itself, originally, the scope did not include any surface work to Highland Ave whatsoever. Given the condition of Highland Ave, the utility work we've done, and listening to a lot of the feedback that you folks and many of your neighbors have had, our plan now is to resurface the travel lanes next summer, 2024. We're hopeful to get all the way from McGrath Highway down to Benton Road. Unfortunately, before that happens, Eversource Gas needs to come back. They have a 100-year plus, I think it's 1905, old iron pipe in the ground between School Street and Benton Road. We've asked them to come in. They've committed to starting this winter, as early as next month, to replace that in advance of our paving work. Because we certainly don't want to spend money paving the street, having it ripped up again, and paving it again. And I do want to thank Mayor Ballantyne for graciously granting us a little over $250,000, $375,000 to help with this effort. So please be patient. By this time next year, Highland Ave will be smoother. Next slide. Jesse, take it away.
So 2 other things that we'd like you to take a look at and get involved with. We have our ADA transition plan run by Adrian Pomeroy, our ADA coordinator, if you want to learn more about that. And then who is signed up for our construction newsletter? You guys live in the biggest construction area of the city. You all should be signed up for it. Once again, QR code. Nick Alecko right there on the 1 and 2s. He sends this out monthly, gets you information on what's going on in the city, and doing a good job. So we have time for 2 questions Once again, we're having our own meeting on the 13th, so if it's something that's a little more pointed based around your own issues, maybe something we save till then. We're also going to be around here as well. You can ask us questions afterwards.
Mike Runco, Berkeley Street.
Hey, Mike.
The heart of Construction Central. So I understand that you have work that will extend into 2025 on Lower Summer Street. How far will the work be completed on Oxford, Berkeley, Avon, and Central, which has been going on now for the gas about 3 or 4 years?
Right. So Mike's right. Mike had to go through gas upgrades on Berkeley Street, and then we did gas upgrades, and when I say us, I mean Eversource, Central Street and School Street the year prior to us actually starting work. This is the same thing we're kind of talking about with Highland Ave. You want to get that work done first before we come in with our utility work and streetscape improvements. So, you know, the contract originally went to 2024, but what got delayed is really the lower Summer Street.
How far will you get in 2024 on those streets?
We anticipate those to be wrapped up.
They will be finished in 2024.
Yeah. The holdover that will lead to 2025 is whatever they can't complete on Lower Summer, which we're talking about from School Street to Bow Street, and really tree planting, because that's a seasonal item that you need to, you know, have certain trees planted in the fall versus the spring. So that's what's going to extend to 2025. We expect most construction to be complete by the end of 2024. You know.
Hi guys, thanks so much for your update, very helpful. I live on Spring Street, and just a quick question about, it's probably related to new trees going in, which is awesome, but there are these major cutouts on Summer Street as you're driving towards Union Square on the right outside St. Catherine's and Agassiz School. They're completely unmarked, so at night you have no idea if you're driving that there's a massive triangle coming out. I imagine someday there'll be trees there, but it's somewhat dangerous because there's always cars parked on Summer Street and there's nowhere to go if there's an oncoming vehicle and you're headed toward this triangle. So I guess my question is there gonna, in the interim, is there gonna be any signage or anything? Because it's pretty dangerous.
So that's a great comment. You know, as it gets darker earlier, we want to make sure that people can see the new, you know, bump outs and design on Summer Street. We'll talk to our contractors, make sure they actually have barrels put at these intersections and make it very visible, you know, to avoid any sort of issue like that. So I'm going to take one more question, and then I don't want to monopolize this.
Hi, I'm on Avon Street. I understand that this work needs to be done. And is there anything that can be done during the interim work to improve the street quality? The top of my car is falling apart from all the potholes. It never used to be this way during this type of work. And wasn't there some sort of contract stipulation that the contractors had to maintain a certain level of street improvements while they're, you know, they had to sort of backfill, keep everything reasonably smooth?
And pardon me if I didn't hear you said you lived on Avon Street, correct? Well, I have good news for you as well. When they pave School Street, they're going to be paving half of Avon Street to smooth that out as well. Which half?
The half is not paved.
The half that isn't paved. We've got one half that currently has, you know, it's the first layer of asphalt. The other half was a milled down surface, which we plan to restore with asphalt before Thanksgiving. But to get to your bigger question here, the contractor is required to maintain safe roads. We have a situation where countless utility trenches, they're temporarily backfilled, they have temporary asphalt on them, and we see them settle a lot. We actually have a weekly meeting where we address just about every depression and pothole, and part of the challenge with that is our contractor wants to make progress to make money and put these types of issues behind them for, you know, we'll get to it tomorrow. And part of our job is reassuring them, we're going to stop your work if you continue without falling back and fixing some of these issues. So I'm here to tell you right now, before the end of next month, before we get to Thanksgiving, We will make sure that every sinkhole, depression, rut in the road is repaired, even if it's temporary, because we will pave all these streets next spring. But going into the winter season, the last thing we want to do is leave sidewalks incomplete, curbing out of place, non-smooth roadways, things like that. So.
And please do report it to us. You can report it either to 311 or you can report to construction@somervillema.gov. That goes to Nick, myself, Dan, many other people involved with engineering. We want to make sure that we are dealing with any issue you're coming across.
And lastly, Jesse and I will also be here all night as well, so please, at the end of this meeting, come find us. We're happy to chat with you. Otherwise, we look forward to hopefully seeing you on Monday, November 13th. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you.
Next up, we have Brad Rawson for a mobility update.
Good evening, everybody. How's the volume in different parts of the room? Everybody hear me okay? Speakers, please adjust your mic. Hi, everyone. My name is Brad Rawson. I serve our great city as Director of Mobility in Mayor Ballantyne's office. That is a small office of 8 people within a 75-person community development department. Just so you know, 30 of those people are affordable housing specialists. 10 of them are small business and workforce development specialists. 10 of them are parks project managers, arborists, landscape architects. The team that I have the privilege of leading is an 8-person team focused on all aspects of our transportation system in Somerville. And we do that because transportation is critical to safety, sustainability, quality of life, quality of place. Where do you have your best interactions with your neighbors? Usually it's on the sidewalk, right? Where do kids meet one another? It's in the public realm. The streets belong to all of us, and they are critical in terms of our commitments to save lives and make sure nobody's run over in crosswalks. They're also critical, as the mayor noted, to addressing the urgent climate crisis. Also, I'm a Somerville resident like you all, and I'm a proud parent of a kid in our amazing public school systems. I've got a short section tonight. Typically, we kind of go back to square one and show you data and show you kind of trends in our safety work. But we're not doing that tonight because the agenda is so packed. So if you have any questions about citywide issues or policy, please feel free to grab me after. What the mayor and the city councilors, including Councilor Ewan Campen, have asked us to do is focus on issues close to home. So we know that McGrath Highway is a topic of conversation that really affects quality of life, safety, and mobility in many parts of Ward 3, Prospect Hill most specifically. Can I have a quick show of hands? Has anybody ever gone to a web page or a community meeting to talk about grounding McGrath, McGrath Boulevard, or McGrath Road diet? That's a pretty low ratio. Okay, so who thinks that Mass DOT as a state agency is completely distant and doesn't listen to local issues of local concern? That's probably going to get more hands, right? What I'm happy to say is that in Somerville, our traditions of advocacy, the effectiveness of our elected officials and staff is so substantial, the Mass DOT returns our phone calls that they actually work with us to manage their big highways in a way that's healthier and safer and more pleasant for our community. Most communities in Massachusetts wish they had the kinds of things that Mass DOT is doing at our request on McGrath. Right now, Mass DOT is replacing bridge structures. They are repaving sidewalks in very limited locations, accessible curb ramps, and they're repaving the street. This is a very short-term temporary maintenance activity that leads into a much larger and more transformative investment about 5 years from now. Think of it as a dress rehearsal when McGrath Highway becomes McGrath Boulevard, when we have our own version of Commonwealth Avenue that actually stitches together the neighborhoods of East Somerville, Winter Hill, and Prospect Hill and Union Square. The legacy of highway building in America is a sad and disgraceful history. 5 Somerville residents have died crossing in crosswalks across Mass DOT-controlled roads in the last 5 years. Folks, we got to do something about this. And so the picture that you see here, imagine what it feels like. Most of you have probably done this. Crossing a crosswalk from the Dunkin' Donuts on the far side of the image in Winter Hill to the Gulf gas station on the East Somerville side. You have to cross 120 feet of asphalt, 8-10 lanes of speeding traffic. It takes an able-bodied person 3 seconds to move 1 foot. So you start to do that math. You're like, whoa, you're going to be exposed to moving traffic for 60 seconds crossing here? We have thousands of school children and families who go to the East Somerville and the Capuano and the Edgerly every day. They use Pearl Street, they use McGrath Medford Highland, and they use Medford Broadway. So I paint this picture for anybody who has legitimate concerns about traffic congestion and queues associated with Mass DOT's current repaving and restriping. Please know that their decisions occurred at the request of the City of Somerville because they help us save lives. Our students and families should not have to cross 10 lanes of speeding traffic to get to the post office or their friend's house or soccer practice. So this is a dress rehearsal. In the long term, it will be much greener and more beautiful, but for the short term, it's going to be just one less travel lane in each direction. The work is scheduled to be completed next year, and in the meantime, we will continue working on similar solutions for Mystic Avenue, for Route 16 and other state-controlled roadways. I'll take a couple questions at the end, folks. Dan and Jesse talked about Highland Avenue. So many of you have been advocating for the Highland Avenue of the future, including Councilor Ben, and for that we thank you. The traditions of advocacy in this community are how we change the world, and yet we as public servants have a responsibility to have community process, to have community meetings, to do our engineering due diligence so that when we rebuild the Highland Avenue of the future, we've dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's. That means designing subsurface utility systems, which actually are not yet complete. Dan and Jesse talked about everything to the east, the Ward 3 side from Benton and Central. None of that civil engineering and stormwater work has happened down towards Davis yet. So that's going to be part of the next chapter of our project development for Highland Avenue of the future. And as you know, you've lived through this stuff. First, you do your utilities. Second, you do your accessible sidewalks. Third, you pave the street. So more to come in 2024 on the future project for Highland Avenue. But Dan and Jesse talked about a short-term Band-Aid to have the travel lanes be a little smoother and less bumpy in the interim. Dan and Jesse talked about our pedestrian safety measures in the Spring Hill project, so I won't reiterate it. But again, I want folks to know that the most awkward time when you see changes, whether it's speed humps, raised crosswalks, or curb extensions and protected bike lanes, the most awkward time is during construction, when you don't have the final pavement, the final signage, and the final pavement markings. It was a great point about nighttime visibility with things like curb extensions, and that's part of the project team's work to make sure that the interim works. But please, give these treatments a chance. They are proven life-saving techniques that are used all over the world, all over the region, and all over Somerville. And so even if the corner of Harvard and Summer feels really awkward and you have legitimate questions about whether trash trucks and emergency response vehicles can get down these streets, these things are planned for, and then they are tested. Just last week, Dan, Deputy Chief Tierney, Chief Breen, and their teams were out running fire apparatus to make sure that the plans that the contractor has built work in reality. We're not perfect, folks. When we get things wrong, we direct our contractors to change things. But it's really important that folks know that we're not asleep at the switch. We are designing these streets to save lives. So Jesse did the classic facilitation technique of a show of hands for our construction newsletter. Can I please do the same thing for our mobility division newsletter? Brutal. Please sign up. I've served this great community for 16 years. You know what's the harshest criticism I've ever heard? I think it was from you, Ben. You're not doing a good enough job of getting the word out, Brad. People don't know the work that you're doing. We reflect on that criticism and we try to do better. Over the last couple of years, we have really picked up our communications game. We have hired, actually trained communications professionals within our engineering and mobility teams to make sure that you folks know what's happening, when, and why, and crucially, how you can be involved in the next one. So please, sign up for these newsletters. The archives are all available. You can read what was being talked about and discussed, and it's not boring spam. We have a 60% open rate on these mass mailers for a couple thousand people. And anybody who's in the communication or marketing fields know that 60% open rates is really, really good. The reason that we get that open rate is that it's constantly pushing people to surveys, community meetings, pop-up events in the neighborhood, so that people actually feel it's worth their time to open that email. We have an online map of traffic calming sites. You can always advocate for more safety in your neighborhood through all these different channels. So I was hoping to talk for 5 minutes. That was 10. How about 2 questions and I'll get out of the way?
Thank you so much. Could you very quickly address what you have in mind to reduce cut-throughs? And associated with that, I just learned that Boston is introducing speed humps on a very big, 500 a year they're going to install for the next 5 years. Does the city have similar plans? Because speed humps and cut-throughs, I think, are, related. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So just to repeat for anybody who did not hear it, the question was about, does the city of Somerville have strategies to minimize cut-through traffic? And we would define, the answer is yes. We would define that as motor vehicle trips that do not start and do not end in Somerville. So if you're patronizing our businesses, you're good. We want you here. If you are visiting a family member or a friend, you're good. We want you here. If you're just using us as the on and off ramp to get to a Kendall Square or downtown job, we prefer you stay on the freeway and not use the Temple Street to School Street cut through, let alone Vinyl or the Putnam or Prescott cut throughs. We do have strategies. Some of them involve traffic calming. So you mentioned the Boston Speed Humps program. You may remember it's actually kind of modeled after ours. So we've been doing this stuff in Somerville at a smaller scale, but we got a couple years a head start. You can see the interactive map that shows where we have been and where we're going. We do about 50 per year. Speed humps, raised crosswalks, raised intersections. Why is that relevant to this conversation? Not only do those things discourage unsafe speeding behavior and save lives, they actually discourage volume and cut through traffic. So we go out and we measure streets before we do this kind of work. And let's just make up an example. We find 10,000 cars per day trying to use Powder House Boulevard near the West Somerville School, where one of our residents was killed by a speeding motorist 5 years ago. We build a bunch of speed humps. We measure again, 8,000 cars per day. We've knocked 20% of the traffic off of that street. The same thing is going to happen with McGrath Highway. The same thing is going to happen with Summer Street. So yeah, you asked for a short answer and it's getting long. Yes, we have a strategy to manage cut-through traffic. It ain't perfect and it's always evolving, and we want you folks to help us tailor the next generation of it.
Hi, Brian, over here. Hi, I live on Summer Street. My kids attend Winter Hill, which is currently at Edgerly. And I was wondering, in relation to the McGrath work, whether the city has any response to requests from the parent community about that pedestrian bridge, which is currently unlit and has overgrown greenery, and we don't know the state of the concrete, and we actually never got an answer about whether the ramp is ADA compliant. So will the McGrath work increase mobility across that pedestrian bridge? Because we've been directed to use that, and a lot of kids are using that to get to school every day.
Thanks for the question. So the question was about the Otis Street footbridge, which was a 1960s attitude of like separate the pedestrians from the highways so you can actually speed the suburban commuters through urban places. A product of its time. What we want is design safe streets at the street level. In the meantime, though, the Otis footbridge does serve an important link, and our public schools have provided that information. As you said, that is one option. We have relayed maintenance requests over to Mass DOT. They actually own that bridge, so we can't send our local crews out to kind of patch up concrete or even to trim up vegetation, but we do relay those requests over to Mass DOT. They claim that they've responded to some of them, but I'm hearing from your question that you think they could do more, and so why don't we follow up, and then I can relay and amplify stuff tomorrow, if that's okay? Thanks, everybody. I'll stick around afterwards. Appreciate your attention.
No one called on him. He keeps raising his hand, and no one calls. I would like to hear him.
Victoria?
Yeah, I don't need a mic. It's okay. So my concern is the McGrath Highway.
Yeah.
There seems to be a bottleneck that's taking place where the new markings are across from I think it's the Dunkin' Donuts. Now, I understand that there has to be new ways to approach, the safety and protection of everyone in this community. But as a person who drives, I think it's, of concern that most people are now unaware of what exists now, or what has now been put in place. So you find that people will be rushing along the street, and then at a certain point it's just, oh, I gotta get into this lane because now things have suddenly changed. And I've been in more than one occasions where somebody almost slammed into the side of my car because of that, because of how the new road markings are put down. Right. So I don't know if signage is still absent, but something needs to be put out there so persons can know that the lane now becomes one, and don't just rush in and almost slam into the side of someone, because pedestrians are very important, but traveling passengers in cars are very important too. I got 2 young children.
Totally agree. Thank you. Just a quick repeat or kind of synopsis. So questions about, similar to that construction phase, right? Signage, notifications. If there is going to be a bottleneck where somebody goes from a 4-lane in one direction down to 2-lane by the McGrath-Medford Bridge, for example, can we make sure that people are doing so slowly, safely, in a predictable manner? The short answer is going to be similar to the one I just provided a minute ago. Mass DOT is managing the contractor. They have required signage, construction drums, but I think that they can do better. And this kind of feedback allows us to go to them and say, hey, have you actually signed off on this? Are these barrels in the right place? Do you have enough advanced warning signs that says merge ahead? So I will be relaying that information to Mass DOT as well, and having standards for city projects. Those are the things that we can control. So the points are well taken about safety during construction. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
All right, everybody, let's talk rats. So I wanted to get a quick survey from everyone. Who's seen a rat in the past month? Past week? Who has seen a rat this evening? We need to talk. Hi, everyone. My name is Colin Ziegler. I'm the Environmental Health Manager for the city. I handle a number of issues, but I want to talk to you about rats tonight and provide some quick updates on some programs. First of all, I'm sure many of you heard the city piloted the SMART program and the SMART boxes throughout our city. We gathered some fantastic data in 2022 and some even more fantastic data in 2023. I'm sorry to say that our captures are down to about half, but the shining light is that in the boxes that we're receiving a high number of captures, we take a proactive stance in educating and enforcing those particular locations, businesses, and residents to do a better job, to clean up, take care of their trash, and they listened. We had a box last year that had 103 captures individually. This year, 0. So that box has ultimately been moved. All of that work that's been done there has remained, and we're looking forward to doing more sort of programs and interactions like this throughout the city in the coming years. So very exciting. Additionally, the city is updating its citywide integrated pest management plan. For those of you unaware, integrated pest management is the gold standard of rodent control. You're not just scorched earth baiting things. You're looking at rodent-causing vectors at every single level of your operation. And from our perspective, it's at the residential level, it's at the commercial level, and then it's also at the city or public space level. And within each one of those, you have to look at education, enforcement, and then ultimately abatement measures. We're very excited to update this because it's going to set out the roadmap for rodent control for the next 2 to 3 years. It's going to involve a number of great departments doing this prevention work, and we're looking forward to rolling it out this winter. So if you know about the Rodent Special Issues Committee, please join us. There's a lot of great information to share and updates that we'll have on the IPM in the near future. But I also wanted to highlight our Rodents Away page. Many of you received this postcard in the mail within the past couple weeks. This postcard lays out the 3 main changes that it's important to make on your own property or in your neighborhood to reduce food, water, and shelter. We noticed on our website, while it has a lot of great information, We wanted to condense that down into something extremely digestible, because the number one thing we can do is to follow these methods and continue to do it throughout the year, educate our neighbors, and inform the city when things seem a little bit out of control or off. So please visit the website. It's also translated into 6 languages. It's an excellent resource to refer to or to share with your neighbors. But I wanted to keep it short tonight because I'm sure we have lots of questions. I'm happy to take those now.
Can you please explain what smart catchers are? Are you poisoning rats? How are you dealing them, and what you do when you catch them?
Yeah, the question was, what are smart boxes? So smart boxes are rodent capturing devices. They allow the rodents to enter. They lift them up into an elevator, they zap them, and then they store them within the box. This is a poison-free method, and it also tracks the number of captures that we have each year. So it's a real-time data tracking device. We're not just guessing, or we're not just simply relying on just phone calls or ticketing.
Data and able to compare it to different locations. They're a really great tool. I'm happy to show you how they work mechanically. I have some photos afterward if you'd like.
You're not bringing any poison?
No, these are poison free.
Is there poison used anywhere in the city?
Yeah, rodenticides are used broadly as a
The question was, are rodenticides or poisons used within the city? Yes, they're the most broadly used passive method for rodent control. They're utilized because things like snap traps, glue traps, even small electrical traps are extremely labor intensive and not necessarily effective. So they are broadly used by pest control companies.
Hi, Colin. I work at 311, and I have a question about abandoned properties. We get a lot of questions about abandoned properties. Do you have a program to deal with abandoned properties where no one is going to sign up for the rodent assistance program?
Thank you, Eileen, and thank you for all your work and help. Eileen fields a lot of calls for rodents and directs them to our rodent assistance program. So thank you. Yeah, the question is referring to vacant properties and whether or not ISD can respond to them. Yes, if you have a vacant property and you suspect that there's rodent activity, if there's overgrowth, if there's just general mismanagement or questions you have about that property, please call us. Call 311, contact me directly. The city is also beginning to consider new ordinance changes for vacant properties and requirements for rodent control there. So, like I said, join us for the Special Issues Committee when we do make and propose those then make those changes. It is something we're looking at. That's a great question. Thank you.
Colin, over here.
Hi, Colin. Another thing on the abandoned properties, absentee landlords not looking after their property. That's not my question, though. So, with the smart boxes, how many did you buy? You said you've moved them around, you're taking stats. Are you buying more? Because now we're starting to see, like, for the first time, and I have to say the first time, I'm starting to see rats on Avon Street. And it's been rife everywhere else, and I'm like, oh, I'm in a golden area. But now, the other day, just driving down, now they're just running around the street. It's getting worse.
Yeah, the question was referring to the SmartBox program, how many we've purchased, and are we planning to buy more? I hope we're planning to buy more. It is my intention to continue to expand the program and deploy them in spaces where they're most effective. They are most effective near commercial spaces that abut dense residential. So if there are certain spaces that you think they could be utilized, more than happy to have those discussions with you one-on-one. As for, I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question? Was that it?
I'm supposed to remember.
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
Yes,
Apologies.
The first one was about absentee landlords.
Yes.
Because that was a huge problem. And that's where we're starting to see the activity on our street, where we have landlords who are not addressing their tenants and leaving the bushes go wild.
Yeah. Again, if you're suspecting a property is being mismanaged or there are bad actors in that space, please report them to 311 or me directly. As for your case in particular, let's talk after and we can develop a plan on how I can facilitate that conversation between that particular property and the surrounding neighbors. Happy to do so.
I've got a quick one on the trash cans.
Yeah.
The trash cans, I mean, I just got one replaced. but I walk around the city with my dog, and about 30% of trash cans, of those beautiful new secure trash cans, have holes in them. Squirrels or rats have eaten holes in them. And I found out myself that you can get it replaced. I'm sure it's a huge expense, but the city has to start promoting getting rid of the trash cans that are not secure.
The question was, or the comment was, about the trash cans and getting them replaced. At the most recent mailer, the Rodents Away mailer, it does highlight the fact that you can call 311 for a replacement toter. We're beginning to pick up communications, and it's part of our annual communication plan to continue to push that information. If you have holes, replace them. If you are waiting, steel wool, sandwich, duct tape on either side, okay? You don't want that hole to get bigger.
Question here. Colin is going to be here for the general Q&A.
Great.
Hello. I'm wondering how the programs on rodenticides and poison interact with our goals in biodiversity. For example, in my backyard, not far from here, we have a large nest of hawks. And then, as far as I know, if a hawk eats a rat, the rat's been poisoned before, then the hawk dies because the blood is diluted. So, yeah.
Yeah, the question is asking about the effects of rodenticide and bioaccumulation. The city continues to track the issues of bioaccumulation throughout our food system. The city is beginning to pivot away from the use of rodenticide and try to diversify our ability to abate. We're looking at things like carbon monoxide usage, dry ice usage, enhancing the use of smart boxes. We've stopped poisoning in the sewers, and now we're asking our contractors to provide a diverse portfolio of treatments. It's difficult to get away from rodenticide. This was a standard practice for the past 2 decades, and many pest control companies haven't made the pivot. We're trying to get them to do so, and we're really looking forward to the dry ice and carbon monoxide use. We're starting to use that on our grounds currently, and we want to make it available to as many people as we can. So we are aware, we're working on it. It is an issue, for sure. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Can you all hear me okay? Volume's okay? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Demers. I'm an economic development planner with the city, so I'm also in the Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development. I have 2 updates for you this evening. One is going to be on the Homan site, which is 350 Medford Street, and then the second is going to be on the Armory, so further down Highland Street. Okay, so starting with 350 Bedford Street. So for anyone who's not familiar with this site, this is right at the bottom of the School Street Hill here at the intersection of School Street and Medford Street. So it's the sort of gravel lot that is just north of the MBTA tracks, between the tracks and Medford Street, just east of that intersection. So the city owns this site currently. They've owned it for about 25 years. The building that was on the site, called the Homans Building, which is where the lot gets its name, thank you, which is where the lot gets its name, was demolished in 2018 and 2019. Here we go. And then it became a staging area for the MBTA when they were working on the GLX station at Gilman Square. So we received that back from the MBTA earlier this year. And so the question really became, what is the future going to be for the Homan site, for the city-owned parcel in Gilman Square? However, immediately after that, the incident at the Winter Hill School occurred, and so a lot of the attention turned towards responding to the Winter Hill incident. The Homan site is pretty close to the Winter Hill School, and so the project team considered how might this be helpful in the initial response. And also, just to be transparent, a lot of the staff time that would have gone to thinking more about sort of the future of the Homan site went towards responding to that incident. So now we're able to kind of turn more back to the question of what will the future of the Homan site be. At the same time, the city is undergoing a process. They're doing a study of several city-owned parcels to kind of determine a priority for disposition. So when I say disposition here, I mean the sale of city-owned land or getting rid of that land in another way if there's not a primary use for it. So the Homan site is just one site that's being looked at. There's several others, and we do assume that based on the high priority and the high community investment in this site, that it will be one of the highest priorities for disposition. along with parcels like 24 Cross Street East in East Somerville and 45 College in Davis Square. So if you are interested in sort of learning more about the home insight, about the process for disposition, about the conversation around this, there is what's called the Gilman Square City Redevelopment Parcel Civic Advisory Committee. So it's a long committee name, but we have a meeting this coming Thursday. So if anyone is interested in attending, I should have done a better job with QR codes. My colleagues have done a great job with that, but please come talk to me afterwards. I can tell you more about that. We're also, the Economic Development Division is going to be doing a presentation to the City Council, to the Land Use Committee, either in November or December, about the implementation of the Gilman Square Area Plan. So this will also be a part of that conversation. If you're curious to hear more, hear a longer presentation on this topic, we definitely encourage you to attend. Go to the next slide. I'm gonna try to adjust this slightly. Yeah, okay. So the other thing I want to talk about is the Armory. So the Armory, not in Ward 3, it's in Ward 5, it's further down Highland Street, but obviously a site that many people in Somerville are interested in. So this is a site that the city took by eminent domain in 2019 to essentially preserve as a community art space. And so the question since then has been, what will the future of the Armory be? So what have we done since taking this site? We've been working on a master planning process, and that has required looking at different art center models in different cities across the country. There are a lot of ways that cities approach running an art space. We've also been doing a lot of listening to community needs. So this has been in 4 different focus groups, in a number of interviews with community members, with tenants, with people who live near the Armory, with artists in the city of Somerville. And then we have also hosted several community meetings this past summer to sort of report back what we had heard thus far. Through that, we've also been doing a lot of visioning about the Armory's future. So there are a lot of desires and priorities for what this building could be. And so trying to see what really floats to the surface and is a priority for the highest number of people. While doing all that, we've also been developing municipal protocols. This is the first time that the city has owned an arts center. Obviously, there is a lot to learn in doing that. So that has been a lot of go-between between the Economic Development Division, between capital projects, between DPW, between the Arts Council, really trying to make sure that we have protocols in place for when an issue occurs so we're able to respond. So what is happening next is the question on a lot of people's minds. So what we heard a lot this past summer through community meetings and through conversations with tenants is that we need to focus on immediate tenant concerns at this moment. So for the rest of 2023, that's really a lot of what we're going to be doing. But there's going to be more community conversation and report out starting in the winter. So look out in January for more meetings around the future of the Armory, because as it says here, the future of the Armory really is a community decision. The conversation is not over. It is very much ongoing, and we are continuously looking for feedback. Yeah, so please keep an eye out for those meetings. If you're curious to hear more, I can also show you the Summer Voice page on the city's website. Happy to talk to people afterwards about the Armory. I do really quickly want to highlight some of the great work that the Somerville Arts Council is doing currently at the Armory. And we have Greg Jenkins here, who's the executive director of the Arts Council. So the Arts Council has been running several spaces within the Armory for the past couple of years. One is a BIPOC art gallery, which they're running on the 2nd floor. So this really functions as a pop-up event space. And they currently have a really great art show there. Definitely encourage you to go see the space if you have not already. And then the second is that they've been managing a dance space on the 3rd floor, so having movement classes, performances, different sorts of programming there, and you can see some of these images on the slide. So like I said, my colleagues did a bit better with the QR codes, but please come and talk to me afterwards about either the Home Insight or the Armory. These are great sites. They're sites I'm very passionate about. Would love to talk with you more. And I can take a couple of questions now.
Where and when for the home and building site meeting? You have the day, but where and when will it be?
Yep, thank you. So the question was when and where is the Home Insight meeting? So I think I referenced two, but the one for the Civic Advisory Committee, that is going to be on Zoom this coming Thursday. So I'm happy to share the link with you afterwards, or it should be up on the city calendar by tomorrow, if it's not already. And then there also is going to be a meeting at the City Council where we are going to present a longer presentation about the implementation of the Gilman Square Area Plan. And I don't have the exact date of that, but that's going to be either in November, sometime mid-November or December. So again, even if I don't have the exact date now, if I get your contact information afterwards, I can, as soon as I know the exact date, I'll share that.
What about the firehouse in Union Square, the SCAT building? That's a city property too, isn't it?
So the question is, what about the SCAT building, so 90 to 92 Union Square? I don't have comments about that this evening, but...
That sounds like it's in your...
So, the Executive Director of OSPCD, Tom Galligani.
Thanks. We all heard the question, which is related to the SCAT building, 90 to 92 Union Square. Everybody's familiar with the old fire station, right? Well, that building is completely empty at this point. We ran into some issues. We investigated the condition of the building over the last 18 months, and the more that we looked, the more that we realized there were some problems. As a result, we had to move the 2 tenants out of the building. We had Somerville Media Center on the first floor. They are in the process. They have temporarily relocated to Summer Nova. They're going to find a more permanent space at Summer Nova. And then also the Mass Alliance of Portuguese Speakers was on the second floor. They have not found a new home. They have a home nearby in Cambridge, their headquarters. So we're still continuing to work with them to find a new home. But that building remains empty, and we're going to take a step back. And at some point in the next 6 to 9 months, we are going to have a community conversation about what the future of that building looks like. All we know is that it needs a lot of work. But beyond that, we have no preconceived notions about what we might use that building for. So maybe in 6 months, when we have another community conversation, another community meeting, we might have more details. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me after this meeting or give me a buzz tomorrow. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
We can take one more question for Ben before we go to our next presentation, if there is one. Oh.
So why so much deferred maintenance on all of the city-owned buildings?
Why so much deferred maintenance on all of the city-owned buildings was the question.
Why does it get to the point where the buildings are uninhabitable when so much of that information should be known before it becomes so bad that you can't use the building?
So I appreciate the question. I'm not sure that I'm going to have the answer to satisfy you, but I would say that municipalities have legacy old issues. You know, we've heard a lot about the underground infrastructure and the disruption that it caused, and some of those, that underground infrastructure goes back to the 1800s. You know, we have to work on them. I would say that we are just evolving as a community. We have commercial development that is coming in that's diversifying our revenue. So historically, we have been wholly dependent on residential tax base, which is capped each year at 2.5% increase. Operating budget over operating budget, that's a state law. We can't do it, so it's like you having your budget of what it takes to manage your house. Say it's $1,000 a month, but you know what? All of a sudden you had this emergency, and now the cost is $2,000. Well, in state municipal government, we are only allowed to go 2.5% plus new growth. So, you know, I know we have problems. There are legacy issues. Historically, the city of Somerville has focused its building assets on our schools and giving our kids, you know, the best buildings ever. And we've slowly ticked through it. But as you heard, you know, we've had problems with the Winter Hill Community School. The City Hall roof and the clock tower has come in. The 90 Washington 90 and 92 Union Square, the SCAT building has issue. Our fire stations. I've been told by some of the employees over at the fire department, some who have worked there 30 years plus, that I was the first mayor ever to do a tour or step in to some of those fire stations. And we had the City Hall Annex over at Thurston Street. So we are slowly ticking through that, and I can't really talk specifically of why certain decisions were made in the past, but one, I would say is we didn't have the revenue to be able to do that. We're starting to realize more of that revenue as you see the commercial construction that's going on. So hopefully it'll be able to allow us to speed up on some of those projects. But one of the first things I did when I became mayor 20 months ago was having all the departments meet together who manage an asset, whether it's public space, whether it's underground, whether it's schools, whether it's city buildings, meeting to come up with a plan. What are the worst buildings? What do we need to move the city forward? What is our strategic vision? What is our priorities? And we thought it would get done in 3 or 4 months. It took about 9 months to do. So some of you know that as the capital investment plan. We said we would look at it every year. And this year it's going to change a little bit because the priority has been, our kids in the Winter Hill Community School. So things are going to bump around. So there is a plan. We are tackling it, and we're also trying to find and use every available fund to us, whether the state gives it to us, whether there's federal money that's coming to it. I met with our federal delegation last week, and one of President Biden's advisor talking about how do you get the money to the municipalities and cities as quickly as possible so we can deal with these legacy issues, because other communities across the Commonwealth and the country are facing the same way. So that was a long answer. It's complicated as this, but I believe that there were choices made based on the amount of resources that were available at the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ben.
Hi there. My name is Luisa Oliveira, and I have been with the city about 12 years now, I think. In 2019, we formed the Public Space and Urban Forestry Division, and I am the director of a team of 7 employees. We're 7 landscape architects, construction managers, and urban foresters. There are 2 urban foresters that work in my division, and then a tree warden in DPW. We call them the Tree Amigos, and they work together to take care of over 14,000 of our trees. One big update for this ward is that we have finally published the Union Square Street Plaza and Streetscape project. I think many of you may have been involved in some of the outreach. It took about 5 years to get this plan published, and it's the 25% design set which will guide the development of Union Square's public spaces and streetscapes. It was a design process focused on equity, so there were a very different way of doing it with participatory action research, where people were going out to different communities and bringing that feedback. The plan was published on the website last month, so please have a look at it. It really does set out the course for projects that are really going to take the next 30 years to complete. So all of this information, as well as most projects in the city, are on a website called Summer Voice, and you can find whenever you need an update, that would be the first place to go and look. The plan is there, as well as an executive summary and different drawings on what the designers and the community came up with. Just today, we had an opening for the Union Square Station Plaza, which I know is not in your ward, but it's a couple feet away. And it is a privately owned public space. And I want to introduce this term to you because private development is one of the ways that we can increase our public space. And it's an important way because it is so expensive to acquire land in Somerville. And so with the new zoning, many of our developments require a percentage as public space. And they work very closely with our division to make sure that they're meeting both the green score that the mayor had referenced as well as the zoning code. And we are on them. When developers cut down trees illegally, we are on them. We push them to build things that are not just, we call them latte parks, where you feel like you have to go in and buy a latte to sit, but actually have utility to the neighbors and to the residents. And I encourage you to participate in those community meetings because they are very important. So today we opened up that station plaza. It's 18,000 square feet of new public space. Yes, it's a plaza, but it does have 54 new trees in it and very lush plantings. And the majority of it is pervious surfaces. So that's really important for us. A couple of other planning things that we are doing in our department. One is the Pollinator Action Plan, which has anybody heard of the Pollinator Action Plan? Great. So the Pollinator Action Plan is the first that we know of as densely populated in an urban environment. And we've worked with a committee and are about to hire a consultant who's going to look at our city and the pollinators and wildlife in it and the habitat in it, and to see how we can maximize that important habitat. We are also working on the open space and recreation plan. This is something we do every 7 years, and it allows us to apply for certain grants. Oh, I'm speaking way too fast, sorry. So it allows us to apply for state money. And we'll be beginning the community process for that, so I encourage you to get involved. Both of these initiatives, again, are on the Summer Voice page. And then I did want to highlight that we plant 350 street trees. This is not including the new projects that Dan Amelin was talking about or the parks projects, but every year our arborists are planting 350 street trees. You can help us with those. The trees are important because they're an appreciating asset. So as they grow, they give us more benefits versus other things that as they get older depreciate. You will see the bags on the trees. Anytime you can water them in times of heat, especially extreme heat, is very appreciated. Protecting them from damage, not locking your bike to them, things like that, telling others to do the same. Removing trash and waste from the pits, not putting salt in the tree wells. Those are all helpful things. And then the other one is a favor of squishing. There is that bug down there. I'm hoping everybody can see it, but it's called I don't know if you guys can see it. It's a spotted lanternfly. And unfortunately, it has been identified in Massachusetts. We actually found one on the campus of this high school. So it's here. And if you see one, you should call the Department of Agricultural Resources and squish it. That is the recommendation.
Squish it first?
You can squish it. I would take a photo first and then squish and send an email to the Department of Agricultural Resources. They are tracking it and it's here. You can also contact 311 or there's an email, trees@somerville.ma, to let folks know about it. Speaking of trees, you may or may not know that this weekend, over 75 volunteers showed up to plant a Miyawaki microforest. The microforest is located just down the hill from here on the Medford side of the street, or on the Medford Street side of the campus. And it is essentially a very small area with very densely planted trees and shrubs. So there are, in this small area, 410 plants with over 34 species. And the idea behind it is that it grows very fast and sequesters more carbon. So this is the first one that we've done. I know these are very, very popular, and a lot of other cities have them. I joke that this is the Jordache genes of public space or urban forestry right now. There was an article in the New York Times about the Cambridge one, but so we now have a Miyawaki forest, and please, I welcome you to go back there and take a look at it and see, what it is now to what it will be in 3 years. There's one at Danahy Park that's about 3 years old, if you're interested in seeing that. And I think, again, the information on the Summer Voice page about the Miyawaki forest. I think that's the last of my slides. Are there any questions?
Hi, this is a small thing, but I've noticed a whole lot more black swallowwort. And I've lived in my house for 13 years and never had it in my yard, and now I'm taking it out all the time. And so, I saw a table at one of the events on Highland Ave, or I forget where that was, to sign up to help with that. I haven't heard anything from that. I'm just wondering about that issue.
Sure. So the black swallowwort is something that we've had a campaign for a number of years for. Usually about June, people will come. There are door hangers. We actually had a resident who was like running everywhere and placing the door hangers on his runs. And there are a number of groups. So in June, we have a campaign. We have these door hangers that are usually available in City Hall or at the libraries, so you can gently tell a neighbor. And there are some other groups, like there's a group called the Pod Patrol in Cambridge that get together and do it, and there are invasive folks who are doing invasive removals. It is an issue, and for those of you who don't know, black swallowwort is in the same family as the milkweed plant, so monarch butterflies will lay their eggs on them, and then when they hatch, they eat the black swallowwort and die. So it is particularly popular also because it's the monarch and everybody loves monarchs, but it is very hard to get a handle on this problem. It is an invasive plant. It's biologically adapted to outperform plants. So I would say in our website, there's a lot of information on how to dispose of it properly and to just keep fighting it. Squish and pull.
Lisa, on your right.
Hi, my name is Paul Simmons. I've lived here for 40 years, and I've been following, especially like the head of community gardens and the tree planting programs and green space and stuff like that. But over the years, the city DPW had no idea how to prune trees, and the electric company and stuff like it's fine. But recently, I've noticed like everyone keeps saying how many trees you're planting, but how many are dying. And I have a lot of experience in maintaining trees and pruning and stuff. And the trees in Somerville are not being properly taken care of. I'll tell you straight up. When they put the tree in front of my house, I looked in there, it was shale and clay. This tree wouldn't survive. I have to have some peat moss, I put it in there. And since it was under the wires, I immediately cut the center leader, which you do when you plant it. It was the wrong type of tree to put in. It was a pear tree that goes straight up. Now, recently,
Paul, can I ask you, when was that tree planted?
That one probably was like 10 years ago.
Oh, it's a whole new world.
But now, what happened recently, Eversource came down, and they come down, I've watched them and stuff, and they do some pruning. And there's a tree in front, and I had pruned that, it was going around the wires. They cut the tree in half, okay? I called the city, a young guy came out, he didn't know about pruning at all. I gave him a little lesson. And then I called again, and someone higher up came out and said, oh yeah, it's 6 feet from the wire. So the tree was growing like this, okay, 6 feet. Yeah, but when the branch falls, it doesn't fall up, it falls down. So you have this thing. And there's been a number of trees on there with disease, no one's cutting them. And then when they cut the stuff off the sidewalks, they do it for 10 years, they wipe it out. And this latest thing from Eversource, go to Berkeley Street, they massacred those trees. They didn't prune them. There's just 2 branches like this with little stuff. And these are, 40-year-old trees. It's a total disgrace. And I go around the city and I call in stuff with these branches that are, about to fall and stuff. And I don't see, it makes no sense planting more trees if no one's pruning them and taking care.
So that is of course true. And I always say that everything that is alive requires taking care of, and certainly our plants and our trees are very much that. But it is a new world in the sense that we now have 3 arborists. Our main arborist on our team has a PhD in biology. They wouldn't plant a pear now. I know that was done 10 years ago. You should report any problem or anything that you see like that to trees at somervillema.gov. That goes to the Tree Amigos, and they are very responsive. The Eversource problem is one that we're very aware of, and that we constantly work with the utility companies to ask them not to do that. They prune too much, we're aware of that, and it is a problem. As for the pruning and proactive maintenance, so we have a number of programs now that were started in the last 4 years. One of them that has the parks on a rotating schedule, so that all of the trees are assessed for their health and then pruned, taken care of if they need biostimulant, et cetera. The second one is a young tree training program where when the trees become 3 years old, they are then pruned and so that they can live a better life. And then the third is about danger and removals. We have had a backlog of things that need to get removed that we are slowly working on. So I hear what you're saying, and we have definitely moved the needle forward, but I think all of us would agree that our trees need more care, and we are working towards that goal. I'm happy to talk to you more if you'd like after.
Sorry, we have one final question then.
When Prospect Hill Park was redone a few years ago, they fenced off a portion of the park for native plants to establish. They seem quite well established now, and actually also the zone is completely full of trash. Is there any plan to allow people to use that part of the park, or is it going to remain fenced off forever?
I am aware of that fence, and I've talked to the counselor about it. The establishment fence is going to come down. There is some differing opinions. Some folks believe that it should not come down because it is habitat and dogs should not go in there, and other people believe that it should. But the fence, the original intention of the fence was to be there for 3 years so that the plants could be established. They are not all natives, but they are established, and we are going to take them down. What will happen after the fence comes down is beyond my control. In terms of, if people are using that space, if it's intended to be used, if it would be better as habitat. But yes, I actually put in a 311 a couple weeks ago to move that fence to the Miyawaki site. Sure.
Good evening. They saved the best for last. By show of hands, how many people are here for the first time in a community meeting? I see a lot of familiar faces, but okay. I usually speak for about an hour and a half. But in the interest of time, I'll cut it short for about 5 minutes. My name is Charlie Femino, Police Chief. I'm here with Captain Jim Donovan, who's our patrol captain. He's our eyes and ears on the street. Most of the issues that come our way, he brings to me, and then I give it to him to reassign. But for the most part, we try to get things done. I'm here just to give a quick update on crime in the city and compare that crime citywide to Ward 3 specifically. So citywide, you see an increase of 8%. That's about 100 incidents over the course of a year, a net of about 100 additional incidents. In Ward 3, Part 1 crime in Ward 3, that says Ward 6, that should not say that, has increased 10% over a year. But again, in either case, the citywide crime has been increasing mostly because of property crime, not crimes against persons. So that's a good thing. We're seeing comparisons in different wards. For instance, Ward 6 had about a 19%, 26%. 26 incidents, 19%, and 24 incidents in Ward 7. So they were up about 27%. But again, most of that crime citywide, regardless of the ward that we're talking about, has been property-driven. Motor vehicle thefts, thefts from parts from motor vehicles, and statistics can be very deceiving. Again, that's about 9 incidents over the course of a year in Ward 3 have increased. So you can see, even though it says 10%, you're talking about nine crimes as a net crime gain for the year. What are we doing about crime in the city? So over the last 3 years, we've tried to, we all know that we have a ward system where patrol cars are assigned to the wards. And what we've been trying to do is shift towards more of an incident-driven deployment plan, where if our crime analysis unit notices a trend or a crime pattern in a particular area of the city, we'll reassign a ward car to that area for those time periods where we think crime is occurring. If they're not in their regular wards, they'll go back to their regular wards to take a call for service, but then concentrate on those specific crimes in that specific area on those times. Hotspots, crime patterns, directed patrols, those are additional patrols that we provide based on city council requests. If someone calls in or reports a particular issue, whether it's a nuisance type crime or otherwise, we put a directed patrol in those areas. And on average, if I remember correctly, during the budget cycle, we do about just roughly 10,000 directed patrols in the course of a year. We try to increase residents' awareness of crime prevention methods. What we've done over the last year and a half is we've increased the data sets that we put on the Somerville webpage. And I've been working with the Director of Racial and Social Justice, and we're also putting additional information. We're reviewing the additional information in the weeks to come. But the goal is to get as much information out there in real time versus, so if you go to our webpage, you'll see what crime is happening, what other incidents are happening, and you can become aware of where, not only in your particular ward, but citywide. Prioritizing suspect identification by way of our criminal investigations unit, our detectives. 2 examples that I'd like to just bring out. Most of you are aware of the shooting incident up on Temple Street at the beginning of the season, where there were multiple shots fired up and down Broadway. We spent literally hundreds of hours working with local, state, and federal agencies. In that culmination of that investigation has resulted in the arrest of 1 individual that was involved in that, the identification of 3 additional persons, and where charges are pending against those 3 persons. So in another, by way of example, we've identified, most of you are aware that there's been someone breaking into homes, and we put that photo up on the website. We were notified shortly thereafter. We do have a suspect's name, and we're attempting to locate that person now. So we do try as best we can to prioritize violent crimes and the identification of those persons with an ultimate goal for identification, location identification, and prosecution. We're also trying to engage more with our at-risk youth. We've had a couple of basketball games with the kids down at the Mystic Development. We sponsored a Junior Police Academy this summer. That was a successful program that had been running for a number of years. It had slowed down and actually stopped during the COVID era. We reinstituted this past summer. We had 22 graduates between the ages of 10 and 14. What do they do there? Well, they meet day 1. They're strangers. They leave at the end of the 5th day as teammates, known to each other. They go through classroom role-playing, de-escalation, and risk skills. They had a tour of the police station. They had a field trip at the Red Sox game. They do CPR, first aid. So there's a number of modules within the curriculum. But the bottom line is that they have a lot of fun. And at the end of the week, it was a very successful program. And we had a lot of good feedback. What you can do about crime. So we talked about crime being on the uptick based on property crime, motor vehicle theft, theft from parts. Winter months are coming. There's been an increase in motor vehicle theft across the city, and basically the people are leaving their cars running. And so I would suggest that if you're going into Dunkin' Donuts in the middle of the winter, please don't leave your car running, because a lot of times there's an uptick usually as the colder months come in. We're having that uptick before the winter even sets in. Burglaries, house breaks. Again, 70% of the house breaks that we've been reported to, investigated rather, over the last year have been entry gained through an unlocked door or a window. Next slide. Traffic enforcement. So we have a lot of conversation over the last several community meetings, whether it be in the fall and the spring. Traffic citations, we're often asked where we put our offices, and the bottom line is we have a traffic unit. That unit has been downsized somewhat, but they go into areas where, based on requests from citizens, particular areas, high volume traffic areas. This year we had a grant, the Municipal Road Safety Grant, and that grant allows at different times of the year for specific time periods, usually 30 to 60 days, to focus on those categories that you see up on the board. And out of about 1,681 citations were issued so far into that program. You can see the stats there for yourself. 1,340 were motorized vehicles, 341 for bicycles, 96% were written warnings. So what does that mean? I know off the top of my head, out of the 341 tickets that were issued to bicyclists, there was 340 warnings. The goal of our traffic enforcement in the city, whether it be for motor vehicles or for bicycles or for pedestrians, is to reduce the number of accidents. It's for safety purposes. We're trying to reduce the number of people injured, and it's to basically change bad driving behavior. So it's not meant to be a punitive measure. It's more for an educational measure. And during the educational component, we hand out pamphlets to bicyclists and to pedestrians. And so it's a success. I know that there's a lot of people who might think there should be more emphasis in one area or the other, but we try to do the best that we can with the personnel that we have in responding to the community's requests. So with that, I'll take two questions. Before we do that, I just want to bring out, I have handouts here. This is a handout that gives a lot of resources. So if you know someone that is in need of resources for one of those 4 categories, you can pick up a handout before you leave. And finally, if you want to report a crime, we have a number up there for the non-emergencies as well as the anonymous tip line. And with that, I'll take 2 or 3 questions now, and then I'm going to be here also with Captain Donovan after the meeting. An hour goes by quickly.
Thank you, Chief. How would you describe the recruitment to the police force in Somerville relative to how it was perhaps 5 or 10 years ago?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear the first part of your question.
How would you describe the recruitment of new officers into the police force? There's been some concern that you are not sufficiently staffed. Is this correct?
Well, there's not a right or wrong answer to that. Recruitment is tough across the country for a lot of different reasons. It's not just Somerville. Across the country, the recruitment for police officers is low. And in addition to being low, the standards have been somewhat raised. So I'm finding that there are a number of candidates when they're called, for every 10 people that you call, probably 4 or 5 of them pass the physicals and get into the selection process and complete the police academy. So it's a never-ending battle, a revolving door. As far as staffing goes, anyone will tell you we're lower than what we normally would be 5 or 10 years ago, but we've also learned to reallocate resources. So we're trying to meet the needs of the services that we have with less officers, but that's part of what we have to do.
Thank you, Chief. I just have a question. I was at the spring meeting, and one of the things that you said was that the idea was not to be punitive, to be educational towards people who broke the law in traffic, right? Be it a pedestrian, jaywalking, someone run the red light, or a cyclist or whatever. The thing is, it's gotten worse. And I think 96% of warnings is just not cutting it, because we're seeing it more and more every day. It's mentioned on social media. It doesn't matter who's doing it. It's actually being done. And I mean, this is a big problem. And today, this morning, I noticed this building, the high school, we've 1,200 kids going in here every morning. And with all the traffic the Spring Hill roadwork that's going on, the traffic is crazy, the sun is in people's eyes, and people are frustrated. And it would help to have somebody to kind of calm the traffic to save our kids. Thanks.
I appreciate the comment, and what I will say as an answer is that we have crossing guards at most of the major intersections where the kids are crossing. Those crossing locations are based on the number of kids crossing at that location. Excuse me? Not at the entrance. No, I'm not specific to one area. I'm just trying to bring out the fact that we try to put crossing guards. We're short-staffed on crossing guards themselves, but those areas are prioritized based on the number of children that are crossing a particular location, the number of kids who are crossing without a parent. And so switching from crossing guards to police locations, we don't have police officers normally at different locations for a fixed post. We just don't have the staffing for that. But if we have a complaint in a particular area, we can have our traffic officers go up there and spend some time, and that's what we usually do. So if there's a particular location, I'll meet with you after the meeting, I'll have somebody from our traffic unit spend some time there to see what the issues are.
This one might have a question in the beginning about safety.
I'll be here after the meeting also.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going to pause for a second. We're going to transition to our general Q&A segment. So I'd like to invite the mayor and presenters and back up towards the podium. City staff, if you're not already over here, if you could kind of make your way to the front in case the question comes up where you're better able to provide some details.
Just come on up this way.
The Digital Bridge Initiative. I'm Greg Hill with the Citizens Broadband Committee. The Digital Bridge Initiative, which is trying to close the digital divide with those who are underserved, has a shelf life of just 2 years with ARPA funding. Now, it's a laudable program, but really, it's not citywide, and the whole city needs to be improved in terms of internet connectivity. The internet has now become such a necessity that it should be treated as a public utility. We have two providers, for-profit providers, and the problem with that is there are arbitrary rate increases, there are frequent dropouts, and I see evidence of that on social media all the time. It's not sustainable for the internet as a public utility. So I'm hoping, Madam Mayor, that a public hearing can be set to look at the recommendations of the Internet Task Force recommendations, which were made in 2019 and have never seen the light of day, and also to consider at this public hearing a request for proposal for a feasibility study of municipal broadband. And there are not over 900 working examples of municipal broadband around the country with greater transparency, lower rates, and better connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. I'm very excited that you brought this up. We had a packed agenda, but Luis can tell you everything about where we are on that right now. Thank you.
So I'll make this really brief. Thank you, everybody. My name is Luis Quispe. I am the Strategic Planning and Equity Manager in OSPCD, and I'm project managing the Digital Bridge Initiative. So real quick, just to point out the municipal broadband question. The question was, is there a way that we can get a feasibility study for determining whether or not municipal broadband is feasible in Somerville? Generally, what the Digital Bridge Initiative did was look at the 2019 report that was published and is available on our website, and determine what we could do with the resources we have now and the funding landscape that it looks like now out there. So the language that we got from the federal level and the Commonwealth level all indicate that the priorities for the upcoming infrastructure availability of funds is leaning towards communities that are, as we describe them, as gateway cities, cities that had former manufacturing industries where the manufacturing went away and they had a trouble adapting into the new service industries like Chelsea, Everett, Revere, Lynn, those kinds of cities with lower than median incomes, and also highly unconnected neighborhoods like out in the west, rural areas. Those are the priorities that have been kind of described in the funding landscape out there with us coming from the federal and the Commonwealth level. So we don't have a sense that we're going to be a priority in that funding cycle. So we're doing what we can right now with the ARPA funding that we use for this project, and we're using it to prioritize digital inclusion on a equitable level. So we're focusing on the 5 to 10% or 15% of the population that's not connected. We're about 85 to 95% connected as a city, depending on which data sources you look at. But we're focusing on that 5 to 15% that's not connected, that has the barriers to accessing the internet, of reliable, affordable internet, access to devices that connect to the internet, and then the skills and literacy that you can use to put it all together and help that get to healthy, stronger communities. So that's the focus of our Digital Bridge Initiative. I invite you all to take a flyer over here on the table. We have QR codes that go out to our page as well on Summer Voice that explain more about the project, our vision, our goals, but more importantly, our values of trying to help our most vulnerable residents connect to the internet reliably and affordably. The image that we're trying to prevent is, if you remember during the pandemic, a viral image went out of a pair of sisters who were out in front of a fast food chain trying to do their homework using the Wi-Fi that's outside the store. That's unacceptable. This is something that's happening all over the country, and that was exacerbated by the pandemic. So we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to help people in those situations be able to get access to the internet. So that's our vision and our value for how we do this in an equitable way. It's not to say that we're saying it's not going to happen, municipal broadband. If the funding landscape changes, we definitely want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that. But as of right now, we are not a federal priority or a Commonwealth priority for access to funds. Understandably, there are communities who have less connected, who are less connected overall, or have lower median incomes that the priority went to them. But nonetheless, we are looking at it as an option and something that we want to consider if the funding landscape changes. I hope that answers your question. But if you want to talk to me more, I'll be right here. Thank you.
Hi, I don't know if anybody can answer this right off the top of their head, but I'm curious how much the tax base has shifted from individual property owners, private property owners, and businesses as we see, I think it's great that we're working in that direction. Does anybody have any idea how much it's shifted?
I don't have the exact number, but let me get your information. We will see more of where it is towards December for this past year. Yeah, so thank you. Let me just say, so what does that mean? We couldn't have built this high school if it wasn't for Assembly Row. We couldn't have opened an office of racial and social justice. What do we have, 7, 8 staff? Without the commercial revenue that has coming in. We couldn't have opened an office of housing stability. I think we have 10, 12 people who work in that office, and that's just been in the last 3 years. We would have laid off people during the pandemic if it hadn't been for this construction that had started in Boynton Yards at 101 South Street. So Yes, we're trying to put it in direct services, and as I mentioned earlier when we were talking about climate change, the new staff that we've added, it's because of also the commercial that is coming in. But I'm happy to get your contact information and get back to, get you a number for you, okay?
My concern is really the increase of property taxes, especially for people on fixed incomes.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like taxes continue to ratchet up, so I appreciate that all this new money is funded new things, I think it's great. But I'm also kind of keeping my eye on where the taxes are going for projects.
Sure. Thank you for that. I will say with the governor's bond bill, the $4 billion bond bill on their housing, they've also increased for seniors and people who want to live in place some exemptions which our tax assessor will be able to give or will be able to pass through. I hear you on that. That is part of our conversation every time we're talking about the services and what does that mean for the taxpayer. But again, if I could get your contact information, I can share with you some of the other, opportunities, especially for those of us who want to stay here and age in place. Thank you.
Mayor Marie here.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a communication issue. People in Somerville don't know if they don't have a landline and they call 311, they get City of Cambridge. And I think they really should be told that they have to dial the whole number if they don't have a landline. When if you call on your cell phones, you don't get some of them 311.
So okay, good.
That is not altogether true. If you're standing in an area of Somerville where you're closer to a Cambridge cell tower, you'll get Cambridge 311. And most of the time, it works if you just dial 311 in Somerville. If you're not near a Somerville tower, you will have to dial 617-666-3311.
I'm just saying my sister lives off of Somerville Ave and she got Cambridge.
Well, that's pretty close to Cambridge if she were close to Prospect Street, which is right there.
I just didn't know that, and
Yeah.
she was like totally confused. She said, "I want City of Cambridge."
It happens all the time.
Thank you for that. Yes. Did you hear that? They're not as good as Somerville. Somerville rocks.
Hi, my question is about 599 Somerville Ave, which used to be the little Loranga Bakery and is now a massive building. And the question is that lab space, is that office space, and is there a specific company or tenant going in there?
So thank you for the question. I don't have oh, good. You have the answer.
The building was built to be a commercial building, so it could be lab, it could be something a little less than lab. And right now, they have no announced tenants. We're hopeful. Yeah, to repeat what you said, yes, the life science leasing activity in life sciences is significantly down. 18 months ago, it was everything, but it's definitely slowed to a crawl. So, we have other industries in the city. We have a whole clean tech sector that's continuing to grow. So we think there's some great opportunities for some of our existing companies to grow into that space.
Thank you for an incredibly wonderful, informative evening. This is a question really about safety, road safety, and perhaps to Jesse. I live on Berkeley Street, adjacent to School Street, and the traffic on School Street, after it's paved, of course, prior to the construction, cars would go down that hill at 50 miles an hour. And as a bicyclist, I commute by bicycle. I have to come up Summer and then turn right against one-way traffic on School Street and then left on Berkeley to get home. My question is, could there be, could you implement speed bumps on School Street in order to increase safety? And could also there be a counter directional bike lane installed on School Street? Thank you so much.
I'm going to pass it on to Jesse, who has the information.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Bob. So School Street will not get the counterflow bike lane, but Central Street does, from Summer to Highland, and we're looking to build that 2024. There are safety improvements coming to School Street, as Dan was talking about, and also Brad. Avon, Berkeley, and Oxford get tighter intersections, as well as, I believe, at Summer at school as well. So there are some stuff we're adding. If you come to our meeting November 13th, we'll show you some plans. All right, thank you, Bob.
Hi, yeah, this is more of a comment about the about traffic enforcement. So I've heard that line about shouldn't be punitive, it should be educational. I've heard that before, and I hate to be a bit blunt, but I really feel like that's missing the mark. This is just an anecdote about that. So I frequently take the 88 bus to Davis, and I take it back, right? And while I'm standing at the bus stop, usually about 15 or 20 minutes, on average, about 10 cars will park illegally, maybe just for a few moments, they run inside, whatever, in the bus lane, in front of a fire hydrant. I really don't think they're doing it because they can't read the words bus lane or read the signs that say no parking anytime. I think they do it because they're pretty sure nobody's going to catch them, and even if they do, there's a 96% chance it'll be a warning and not a ticket, right? I think if you gave them tickets consistently, they would stop doing it. And it would be really easy. Just put a person, stand there, give them tickets. And yeah, so sorry, I don't buy it.
One thing that I'll direct folks' attention to is work that's happening to legalize certain forms of automated enforcement to deal with illegal stopping. Somerville's actually been kind of on the cutting edge of this stuff. Our council has done great work. Our staff have done great work. We've invested in some equipment down in Davis Square as like a hot spot, in terms of double parking and such. And if those experiments work the way that we want, and if we can have the transparency and accountability to make sure that they're not being misused the way they have in some markets around North America, then we could see an opportunity to scale that stuff up. So we're trying to push. Just wanted to offer that in terms of automated enforcement as part of a solution.
Hi, thank you. This is my neighborhood. I live on Highland, and my question is about who I reach out to, because I don't think they're here today, or maybe they're not. For over a year now, the streets in this neighborhood have been used as a parking lot for the city staff and high school. It was, quote, a pilot, and there was a speaking night, but I don't feel like anybody was heard what we were saying. I did notice in this document that the homeless site has a bunch of cars parking on it down there. Which would potentially allow people to park. I do think it's damaging to the neighborhood that the streets are just basically considered a parking lot. And I think it's damaging local businesses, prevents other businesses in Gilman Square. So I'm wondering, who is it that we talk to about this?
So I would love to talk to you in more detail afterwards, because this could be a 15-minute conversation, and it's something that everybody should be working on together. The city has a variety of parking regulations for day-to-day work, trying to balance the needs of residents, of local businesses, workforce in a place like Somerville High School. You also specifically mentioned something that made me wonder if part of your question was about construction impacts and construction workers.
Yeah, totally. So this,
Rather than blocking, you know, all, I mean, there were many things brought up in that group meeting a year ago. You know, there were people who have aides that come and can't park. I've had contractors drive away because there's no place to park. There's people that drop their kids off that want to come back home that can't park. You know, there were many things mentioned for people who live in this neighborhood, and you know, it's not the new Star Market that you're told you can't have a car, right? There's people who have cars in this neighborhood, and yet the teachers and the staff of the city are basically giving little slips of paper to put in their car, and they can park anywhere they want and stay there all day without, you know, moving every 2 hours or something like that.
okay, sorry, it took me a minute to get the genesis of your question. Yes, the city is constantly working to manage those resources so that they work for residents and for workforce. One of the things that we've tried to move the needle on recently that we're super proud of is putting Charlie cards in the pockets of the workforce with the new Green Line, with the new community path. We want more and more of our city hall and high school workforce to have just fewer barriers to use the T and maybe not bring so many cars to the neighborhood. That's a partial solution, but that's something new just over the last year or two. If there are particular spots around the library or around the small businesses at School Street, for example, where we feel that more loading zones are important for business or for home health aides, contractors coming to residential properties, we can always work to try to get more loading zone regulations in place. This is a very limited resource, and we are working every quarter, every year to try to manage that limited resource so it best serves the neighborhood. So I'm taking note of this and realizing that we can get more information back out to the public.
Even more sites will be taken when you change Highland, right? And so I really don't feel like anything's being addressed to get the parked cars off of the streets that are right here.
So duly noted, thank you. I will point out that in other neighborhoods where we do safety projects, we're often adding new ADA dedicated spaces, new loading zones, specifically new more parking meters in business districts to get more turnover for the merchants. So we've really picked up our game over the last couple of years about how to make better use of those limited resources, and that's the kind of approach that we will bring in the future of Highland Ave.
Just for the sake of time, we have two final questions here and here. Again, if we didn't get to your question tonight, we do have that email address, cm@somervillema.gov. And staff will be hanging out after the meeting as well for one-on-one conversations.
So earlier we had someone asking for bike lanes against the one-way traffic, and that is really not safe for pedestrians. It's really bad, and it's putting a Band-Aid on bad policy because, you know, the bikers are just lazy. I'm one too, but I just go to the next street and usually that works and you can go the other way. It's a Band-Aid. If there's too many streets going in the same way, you know, it should be like in New York, you have one going left, one going right, one going left, one going right, and this is not a problem. You know, you keep things clean. You don't have to worry about extra infrastructure for really no good gain.
I think it was more of a comment. So I think it was Jesse who answered the question. Oh, was it Brad? The contraflow. What was the name of the street again that was mentioned? Was it
School? They were going to do it on Central instead of School, and that's just a really bad place to do that. It's look to the downhill piece, you know, and the bikers are going to go like, you know, like basically the guys on the skateboards today, and as a pedestrian you get really screwed there.
So the good news with Central Street. So first and foremost, School Street will not have its own contraflow bike lane. Central Street, at the terminus of the Spring Hill project, will be a one-way street northbound to Highland Avenue. We plan to have 2 separated cycle tracks with a buffer of brick pavers. So you'll have, if you can envision this, a one-way street heading north. On each side of the road, we'll have sidewalk, cycle track, a brick buffer, and then the curb. So the cyclists on that particular street, Central Street, will not be in the road at all. They'll have their own lane, similar to what you see on Somerville Avenue. So that's been taken into consideration where we're not intending to direct bicyclists directly into oncoming traffic. On Central Street? There is going to be limited residential parking available. There will be no parking meters on that portion of Central Street between Summer and Highland Avenue.
Thank you. That's fantastic, by the way.
Thank you very much for this evening. It's been very instructive, and I appreciate all your hard work and your comments tonight. With respect to climate change, we decided about a month ago to electrify our house, install the heat pumps, taking out all the gas lines and using heat pumps. It is very expensive. And the state provides a number of wonderful incentives. My question is, after we completed this, my house will obviously be worth more. Is that going to be reflected in an increase in my next time our house is assessed?
So, thank you for the question. I don't have the answer for that in particular, and I don't think anybody here does it. We can get back to you, but I'm not sure. The valuations are based on comparables and comparable sales. And I don't know what the comparable sales in Somerville are for your house. So we just have to ask assessing, okay? We can get back to you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And